Okay, we're gonna talk about a life cycle diagram, and then hopefully you can do it on your own at home. So the handout for this is on D2L, as well as I handed it out Monday in class. So check that out. So what I've done here on the board is just kind of draw out the circles, and we have what we're trying to do is gather yearly seasonal patterns for different species of wildlife. And then, so handwrite, first thing you want to do is handwrite your months so that it makes it a little bit easier. Your seasons are already written on your circle. And I would like you to color code the things that you need to record. So I'm going to start with my species. The species of interest for this exercise is going to be an elk. All right. And so we want to look at different components of what an elk needs throughout an annual cycle. So let's start with vegetation. And so I'm going to write vegetation in green. And it doesn't really matter where you draw things out, but since habitat's kind of written in the middle, we'll start with some habitat components. So what do elk eat? Well, in the springtime when things are greening up, they're going to be eating grasses. New growth for grass. It's highly nutritious, and hopefully you can see that. There's a bit of a glare. Well, it's best I can do. So we have grasses coming through in the spring, but once late spring hits, they're going to switch over from grass and consume quite a lot of forbs. So I'm going to draw forbs in, and they'll eat forbs as long as forbs are available. So let's put forbs here. Okay, now they may kind of go back and forth, but as the grasses get more decadent throughout the summer, they're going to keep eating those forbs. Well, toward fall, the forbs are going to be drying out, and we may have some regrowth of grass, or they may just switch back over. So we're going to say through this fall season, they're eating grasses again. And then through the winter, grasses aren't very nutritious, nor are they necessarily available due to snow. So we're going to say through the winter, they're going to eat grass and shrub. And it's important that you know that I'm not making this up. This is coming through research. So make sure you first pick your species and then research what its life needs are, and then you can start working on this. So that's what the animal is eating. The next thing we need to look at then is where the animal is on the landscape. So let's go ahead and use a different color for that. I'll go with purple. And so we seasonally are going to see them using different elevations and then different proximities to water. And I'll just lump all that in on one for this. So starting in let's start with the springtime and summer. So in springtime and summer for elk, they're going to be using some higher elevation landscapes to stay cool. So we're going to say they're using high elevation from about March through September. So we're going to cross into here a little bit. And at that time, they're going to switch and start moving down, and a lot of that is going to just depend year to year on when snowfalls hit, but they'll be at low elevations for the winter time and for periods of higher snow. During the season that the cows are giving birth, they need to stay closer to the water, and we'll come back to reproductive times here in a moment, but from basically May through mid-July, they're going to need to be within 200 meters of water, the cows especially. But we don't have to designate that as just the cows and calves. All right, so then we have purple equals our location on the landscape. Okay, so now let's move to social dynamics. Okay, so social dynamics. In the summer, males and females will be separate from about late April, early May through August. So we might say males, females are in separate groups. see if that works. Males and females are separate through this time. Come fall, males are going to be trying to find their females. And so starting in about September, usually it's kind of late September, the females are going to be kind of grouped up into harems by a dominant male. So a harem would be the breeding male keeps his females all together, and you see him fighting off other males. Once breeding season is over, you'll see, and so about from late November through the winter, you will see mixed herds. The testosterone has diminished. It's an advantage to get through the winter to have a lot of animals packing down the snow in one area. And so you'll see mixed herds of males and females throughout the winter. And so we'll put that as social dynamics in blue. And I don't care what color you use. I just care that I can read it. Okay? And if you want to label it on the actual chart down below where I bullet point out what you should include, that's fine too. Okay, so what are we missing? We're missing some reproductive behavior. So I'll put that in black just because I don't have another color. I wish I did. I have red, but I'm saving that. So as I mentioned, the fall is the breeding season, late September into early November. We call that rut, when the males are trying to get the females. And it's at the end of that, well, you know what, I'm going to say for the most part, rut is over really before November. But females may stay in estrus longer, especially if they don't get bred. So late September into November for estrus, and I could probably back that off just a little bit. And then hopefully the breeding works, and come May, the female gives birth. And there is really a short window, 2 to 3 weeks in late May, early June, where the majority of young are born. And but some, if they get bred later over here, they may give birth a little bit later. So I'm going to have kind of a tail on this one, where we have most young being born in a really short period of time. And we call that the period of natality, when the females are giving birth to the calves. All right. Next, periods of time where highest mortality occurs. And so I'm going to use red for this. Typically, the first thing students say is hunting, and that is one of our largest causes of mortality in Colorado for elk currently, without really a strong natural predator other than some mountain lions. So we'll say hunting, okay, from October through November. Of course, it varies throughout the state a little bit, but the fall. And then the next biggest period of mortality is sometimes not real intuitive, but it's actually, yes, we do get some mortality in the winter, all right? And if they don't have good winter range, you could see more natality or mortality during the winter. So I'm just going to say that winter range is important here, and having a big fat layer to get through the winter is really important. If not, then what they're going to do is starve in the middle of winter. Okay, you can see that barely at the top of my board. Now, let's say, especially your younger animals, they may actually make it through the winter. But if they don't have good fat storage, or winter range was really tough, you do get periods of mortality here into March. So I'm going to say starve kind of through that period here. And then the next most likely time to die if you're an elk is right after you were born. And so either late April, things are really weak and the young are weak and the predators are all hungry. They may get eaten by predation here. But then the natality period would be really heavy. So I'm going to label this all predation. A lot of calves get picked off right after they were born. And the other thing that can happen at this time of year is they've made it all through the winter. Things should start greening up. They should start eating their grasses and forbs. If they get hit with a late storm in April, May, then they may actually die from starvation again, or from just simply running out of energy. So I'm going to say a late cold or storm can take more out here. Okay, so that's going to increase mortality. So we'll have mortality, sorry, my board is kind of small. So mortality is red also. Okay, the final time that it's not good to be an elk is at the late season in the summer. So typically, you know, food can be a concern here when you've run out. But if it's greening up and it's a good summer, you're probably not going to have much mortality here. But if you have a dry year, you may get some droughts affecting the forage, amount of forage in late July. So if I say droughts, and I'll say droughts lower forage at this time of year, that can decrease body condition. You may see the mortality here, or you may actually see it play out more in the winter when they don't survive because they don't have their fats stored up. Okay, I think I covered all of the pieces of your life cycle diagram. This is the first chart that you need to make. What happens to them in one annual year? The reverse of your sheet goes what happens to them over a series of 4 years, really looking at reproduction and recruitment.